They come in many different directions, different vectors, different pathways.
If you cruise down the Rocky River or the Black River in Northeast Ohio,
invasive plants and animals are a huge ecological issue.
You will find them, invasive species.
We're really focusing on those reproducing populations.
Fish like the common carp, grass carp, round goby, even goldfish. All four are considered harmful to native species.
Yeah, you can go in on that side.
To fight it, you'll find crews from the Ohio Division of Wildlife.
Push it towards the center of the boat.
And Cleveland Metro Parks.
That's pretty good.
Throwing current into the current.
It's like a taser.
To shock fish, temporarily, through a process called electrofishing.
We're stunning the fish, they float up, we net them.
Which is necessary, according to Cleveland Metro Parks aquatic biologist Mike Durkalek.
You may measure them and weigh them if you're doing a fish survey. Remove them if they're not native.
The reason for all of this, get rid of the invasive ones, eating food the native populations need to survive.
While sampling for invasive species here on the Black River in Lorain, this crew caught a freshwater drum. It's a native fish, so they'll throw it back in the water, but grass carp head back to the lab.
The overall goal or objective would be to eradicate grass carp from Lake Erie.
Which is what these groups are after.
In Ohio, you're allowed to have grass carp as long as they're sterile.
Problem is, many of them aren't. They make their way from ponds to streams to rivers, often through flooding.
We'll set it right here.
So this grass carp strike team, as ODNR calls them, is trying to find out what rivers in the state have reproducing populations of grass carp.
Our concern is that if they expand their population, they'll impact the habitat for native species and also a food source for waterfowl.
These fish don't die from electrofishing. Scientists throw back the fish they don't need. But grass carp have to be killed to test whether they're fertile or sterile. So how big is the problem? Consider what a pet goldfish can become outside of the aquarium.
A goldfish in a small bowl could live its whole life and not grow very big.
When they are left free to roam our rivers.
You take that same fish and put it in an environment with unlimited space and a lot of resources like Lake Erie or the Rocky River. It can grow to roughly the size of a basketball.
For these agencies, removing invasive species is a priority.
The best prescription there is keeping them out in the first place. If they're already here and established, electrofishing is one tool we can use to help keep their populations in check.
All to make sure they don't crowd out Ohio's native fish. Olivia Fecteau, News 5.
An urgent reminder tonight from the Northeast Regional Sewer District: do not flush unwanted or expired medication down the toilet.
In your quest to clean out your medicine cabinet, you could be putting yourself and your neighbors at risk. News 5's Olivia Fecteau explains where those flushed drugs end up.
At the Easterly Treatment Plant, a lot of things get removed from our wastewater, from grease and fats to flushable wipes, which, by the way, you shouldn't flush. But one thing that can't be removed is medication.
They might say that they're flushable, but they're definitely not. They don't break apart like toilet paper does, and when it comes to the treatment plants, we end up sending it to a landfill anyway.
Jen Eltine with the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District says anything that's flushed comes here to a wastewater treatment plant.
This is almost the end of the wastewater treatment process. This water will eventually go back out to Lake Erie. Drinking water plants often draw their water from the lake, and neither type of treatment plant can remove all the pharmaceuticals from the water.
If people have leftover medicines, they haven't been used up, the expired medicines, if they do not dispose properly, if they just throw in their trash can or down the toilet, so they might be also get into the wastewater treatment plant.
Kent State researcher Dr. Jen Moe has studied drinking water treatment plants. Her research found there are low levels of some medications and personal care products in the water we drink. That's in part from what people dispose of through wastewater, but also just what comes from our own bodies.
They may not have immediate impact to human or wildlife health. However, we do not know the long-term chronic impact of those low concentration compound in the water.
For the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, it comes down to personal responsibility.
It's definitely important that you take responsibility for the products and the things and the waste that you're generating on your own.
Making sure our water doesn't contain medication that should go somewhere else. In Cleveland, Olivia Fecteau, News 5.
They're finding plastics in tap water, in bottled water. It's in the air we breathe. They're in the food that we eat.
Well, if that reality has you given the side eye to your sink, you'll be happy to know there is a plan. In just a few months, a plastic bag ban takes effect in Cuyahoga County. Some local retailers are ahead of the curve, changing policies now to reduce plastic waste in our waterways. News 5's Olivia Fecteau shows us one store's effort in this News 5 original.
At Revolve Kids and Tweens, a resale store in Lyndhurst, owner Felice Mueller-Pierce is passionate about being green, helping families with growing kids save money while extending the life of clothing before it's recycled.
There is so much garbage coming out of America that's clothing.
But that's not the only way she's trying to run a green business. As of March 1st, Revolve Kids no longer offers plastic bags at checkout.
I'm making a stand here. I'm just doing it.
Plastic bags aren't the most common item found at beach cleanups. They often get caught in trees or storm drains before they even make it here. But instead of ending up in the trash, some bags end up in the lake where they sink. Even though we can't see them, they still create problems.
Plastic never truly goes away. It does not become a useful nutrient in the water environment.
Take a look at these images of plastic breaking down in the Great Lakes. The particles get smaller but don't disappear. This isn't just a problem in Northeast Ohio, but worldwide.
It's also starting to contaminate our drinking water. They're finding plastics in tap water, in bottled water. It's in the air we breathe. They're in the food that we eat. And so we don't really know the harms to human health yet. That research is being done right now.
Ohio Sea Grant, a program through The Ohio State University, says since water plants along Lake Erie pull their water from the lake, it's safe to say a lot of people are consuming microplastics. To combat the issue of plastics in the water in Northeast Ohio, Ohio Sea Grant is studying how to get people to use reusable bags instead of plastic, with a grant from NOAA's Marine Debris Program through the City of Cleveland's Office of Sustainability.
We found out that people have reusable bags. They just forget to bring them into the store, and they end up leaving with a single-use plastic bag.
With a ban on plastic bags set to go into effect in Cuyahoga County in January, the staff at Revolve Kids is encouraging customers to bring their own bags or buy a reusable bag at checkout.
There are definitely a problem. We see it on the news all the time. If anyone makes the decision to go plasticless, that's great because every little bit helps.
I don't use the reusable bags. I just won't use the bag at all.
Most customers are all on board with it. They thank us. I have some customers who get really upset and say, well, that means you're giving me a discount, right? And I said, no, you're supporting the environment. What more discount do you need?
Giving customers reusable bags hasn't worked so well everywhere. Ohio Sea Grant worked with the Lake County Solid Waste District earlier this summer to hand out 1,600 reusable bags.
We gave those away at the local farmers markets so that people would be able to take those and use them and reuse them rather than having them receive their vegetables and things in a plastic bag that they would just throw out.
But Ohio Sea Grant says not many people have been reusing them at farmers markets. Still, with plastic bags ending up in the trash.
If you can use something instead of it, or if you can use it again, we'd prefer that.
Changing behavior can be hard, but Felice Mueller-Pierce believes it's possible.
It's not scary. You just have to say, I'm doing it, because it's the right thing to do for the environment and for our waterways, and that it's going to take some gumption to stand up to customers who don't get it. But the more of us who do it, customers are saying, this is awesome.
Olivia Fecteau, News 5.
Now at 5:30, the algae bloom in Lake Erie has grown so large it can now be seen from space.
Yeah, the image we were showing you just a moment ago, taken by a NASA satellite, shows where the bloom was most dense as of July 30th. Since then, though, the bloom has continued to spread from the western basin near Toledo, heading east toward Port Clinton, Sandusky, and the Lake Erie Islands.
And as News 5's Olivia Fecteau reports, that algae bloom is costing water treatment plants a lot of money.
The algae concentration in this water is higher than what you'd see in Lake Erie.
It would probably be about 50% of that, 40 to 50% of that.
But the lake itself doesn't look much better. A toxic algae bloom is spreading from Lake Erie's western basin.
We've been watching it very closely since the middle of July.
The bloom has settled here in Port Clinton. A lot of extra time being poured into treating the water at plants like this one in Ottawa County.
We have to take the water from the lake, we have to treat it, and then we have to
make sure and guarantee to the public that it's safe.
Sanitary engineer Kelly Fry says the plant closely monitors the levels of toxins in the algae. The last 10 days or so, levels have been high enough that people and animals shouldn't be in the water. At one point, high enough that no one should have come in contact with the water at all.
There's a sense of urgency here that this year is as bad as we've had for quite a while, and it is very difficult for us to treat.
When water comes into the Ottawa County treatment plant, it has a high concentration of algae. It needs to go through processing and treatment to make it safe to drink, but you can see partway through the process the water is still cloudy, not yet safe to drink. By the end of the process, though, the water looks totally different. You take a look down here, you can see the final product is clear, 20 feet to the bottom.
Run each filter about 60 hours, and then we backwash.
The bottom line, after 4 phases of treatment, what started as sludgy-looking lake water is safe to drink. But all this extra work is costing taxpayers a lot of money.
The costs are spread out to all our water customers. They're paying for it because they have to pay the cost for us to remove all of this. That's a huge cost for everybody.
That cost includes extra stress and time for workers trying to make the water safe.
It's very stressful. It's stressful for the people that work here, and it's stressful for us.
A task these leaders say they're handling the best they can, but they hope there's a solution to reduce the algae going forward. In Port Clinton, Olivia Fecteau, News 5.
Meet the team battling the bloom.
If you've been out there, it's a really remarkable and horrible looking thing.
That's George Bullerjohn, a biology professor at Bowling Green State University. He's talking about the scum on the surface of Lake Erie, an algae bloom caused by cyanobacteria called microcystis.
It produces a toxin called microcystin, which shut down the Toledo water supply.
But that's not the organism he and his team, including PhD student Michelle Nudek, are fighting.
In Sandusky Bay, there's a different cyanobacterium which blooms, and it produces the same toxin, but it behaves very differently.
The bad guy in this bloom, Planktothrix. Its toxin is harmful to people and animals alike. Problem is, this bloom lasts much longer than the one in the open lake.
We're looking at an event that starts in mid-May and goes all the way to the beginning of October.
Sometimes the end of October. So Bullerjohn's team is trying to find the best way to beat it back to keep people healthy and save money.
It limits recreational exposure. That means the water treatment plant has to do all sorts of procedures to neutralize the toxin, which costs money.
For people living near and playing in the bay, it's not as easy to see the algae that could hurt you.
Microcystis is little round balls, and they'll go through and stick to each other, and you get those mats, and you get that thick soup of water.
Michelle Nudek says this bloom is different. It just stains the water green. It survives and thrives in the bay where there's low nitrogen, low light, and heavy sediment.
386.6.
386, that's going high. 386, okay.
Even though the bloom is gone for the season,
under bloom conditions, we see the pH rise above 9.
Winter is coming, and the team's work is far from over.
We want to understand sort of what the baseline community is under a non-bloom condition.
One thing these scientists keep an eye on is the level of the water. You can see where the levels were earlier this summer compared to where they are now. The team from Bowling Green says the extra water meant more nutrients in the water due to soil erosion, and that may have contributed to the algae bloom here in Sandusky Bay.
The team is working with others to install sensors and equipment to keep this battle with the bloom going all winter long, providing data about water flow and helping the team figure out what helps the bloom survive or kills it.
Having these sensors in place allows us to assess this on a day-to-day, if not hour-by-hour basis.
Their ultimate goal is to limit the bloom, maybe by putting vegetation in the bay to keep the water cleaner, conditions the bloom doesn't like.
Let's improve it so that more people have a chance to use it throughout the summer.
Making Sandusky Bay safer for drinking water and for fun. Olivia Fecteau, News 5.